about masks. They were wrong about ventilators. They were wrong about the curve. They were wrong about social distancing, changing the curve, whereas if the actual change occurred before social distancing. They were wrong about economic impact. They have been wrong about everything.
It's very dangerous. You know, think of it as a national ID on steroids. And they're loving it. Lena Hidalgo, you mentioned the judge in Harris County, she says she's going to have an army of contact tracers that are being hired. Guess where they're getting the money? The CARES Act, right? The Disaster Act. They're going to hire all these people who are out of work. It's about going door to door. It's about forcing you to get tested. Oh, it's voluntary, but you can't go out of your house if you don't. Forcing you to get tested, and then force you to tell them everyone you've had contact with, and they will go to those people who you've had contact with and get information on who they've had contact with, and then they can tell you have to quarantine, you have to isolate. And one of the goals is, according to the CDC's own website, is to go in daily, ultimately, and check up on people and find out if they're still quarantined, find out if they're still hiding. All of this in the context of an outbreak of a virus that, as a lot of people who weren't hysterical predicted, is going to come and go like all viruses. And we actually, if we can just look at those first couple of slides, because this is daily new deaths in the U.S., just follow that curve. The virus is reaching the end of its shelf life, as they always do. Now let's take a look at Texas. It's a little more complicated, but here's Texas. New deaths in Texas. You can still see that same arc, the same curve. They say, oh, no, we're doing this because the second wave is coming. It'll be worse than the first. That's possible because they forced everyone to stay inside and not develop their immunities. But at the same time, the same people who were saying, we got to trace everyone because of second wave, these are the same people, Dr. Paul, who got everything so wrong in the first place. Millions will die. Run for the hills. We got to shut everything down. So why should we trust these same people who messed everything up to now tell us we have to do this?
All right, I wanted to read a quick article from Ron Paul on ZeroHedge. Ron Paul rages listening to virus experts has led to death and despair. Certainly true. I love Ron. I think he's a great man. He was a great congressman. I don't agree with him on everything. He's an extreme libertarian, but he's one of those guys that absolutely has principles and deserves to be listened to and heard. So I'm going to read this article real quick. It's not a big, long one. On April 21st, the Washington Post savaged Georgia Governor Brian Kemp's decision to move, opening his state after locking down for weeks. The title of the article was Georgia Leads the Race to Become America's #1 Death Destination. The author, liberal pundit Dana Miliband, who you'll see here, actually found the possibility of Georgians dying to be hilarious, suggesting that, as a promotion, Georgia could offer ventilators to the first 100 hotel guests to register. What an asshole. Miliband, who is obviously still getting paid while millions are out of work, sees his job as pushing the mainstream narrative that we must remain in fear and never question what the experts like Dr. Fucky tell us. Well, it's been 3 weeks since Miliband's attack on Georgia and its governor, predicting widespread death, which he found humorous. His predictions are about as worthless as his character. Not only has Georgia not seen coronavirus burn through Georgia like nothing has since William Tecumseh Sherman, as Miliband laughed, but COVID cases, hospitalizations, and deaths have seen a steep decline since the governor began opening the state. Maybe getting out in the fresh air and sunshine should have not been prohibited in the first place. In fact, as we now have much more data, it is becoming increasingly clear that the U.S. states and the countries that locked down the tightest also suffered the highest death rates. No surprise. Ultra lockdown Italy suffered 495 COVID deaths per million, while relatively non-lockdown South Korea suffered only 5 deaths per million. The same is true in the U.S., where non-lockdown states like South Dakota were relatively untouched by the virus, while authoritarian-led Michigan, New York, and California have been hardest hit. That's not exactly, a great comparison, given that there's only about 15 people in South Dakota. But nonetheless, it's accurate. It's an accurate depiction. In those hardest hit states, we are now seeing that most of the deaths occurred in senior care facilities after the governors ordered patients sick with COVID to leave the hospitals and return to their facilities. There, they infected their fellow residents who were most likely to have multiple comorbidities and advanced age that turned the virus into a death sentence. Will these governors be made to answer for the callous disregard for life? Of course, we know the answer is no. By the way, Cuomo came out yesterday or the day before and said these old people were going to die anyway. What are you going to do? They were going to die anyway because they're old. And the virus just kills old people no matter what. Sending in sick patients with the virus had nothing to do with it. They were going to die anyway. And he's getting away with it. His approval rating's probably 80%. Yesterday, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar admitted the obvious. We are seeing that in places that are opening, we are not seeing this spike in cases. So why not open everything? Because these petty tyrants cannot stand the idea of losing the ability to push people around. Shutting down the entire United States over a virus that looks to be less deadly than an average flu virus, particularly among those under 80 who are not already sick, has resulted in mass unemployment and economic destruction. More Americans may die, actually will die, from the wrong-headed efforts to fight the virus than from the virus itself. Little tidbit, for every 1% increase in unemployment, 40,000 people on average die because of that increase in unemployment. There's a direct correlation. You could argue correlation doesn't mean causation. I think in this case that'd be a tough argument. So we were at 3.7% unemployment in early February. Right now, as of 2 days ago when I checked, we're at 14.7%. So basically an 11% increase in the last 3 months in unemployment. So 40,000 times 11, 440,000 deaths. That's over the course of a year. It works out, I'll cut to the gist, it works out to be about 92,000 people will die as of now for the shutdown. And every day we go on with this shutdown, more people will die as a result of that, independent of the COVID-19 virus. All right, continuing. Americans should pause and reflect on the lies they are being sold. Yeah, unfortunately, only half the country does. The other half believes anything they're told. Masks are just a form of psychological manipulation. Yeah, I've been saying that for a few months. Many reputable physicians and scientists have said they are worthless and potentially harmful. Lockdowns are meant to condition people to obey without question. How effective has that been? A nation of people who just do what they are told by the experts without question is a nation ripe for a descent into total tyranny. This is no empty warning. It's backed up by history. Time to stand up to all the petty tyrants from hometowns to Washington, D.C. It is time to reclaim our freedom. I couldn't agree more, Dr. Paul. By the way, he's, I believe, an OBGYN. I'm not sure when he last practiced. Probably a long, long time ago.